Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Fern Chronicles podcast. I am Fern. Today, I actually am going to be starting a new series called Ambulance Horror Stories. So, as you may know from the previous podcasts, I'm an EMT. I work on an ambulance, among other things. And I have plenty of cool stories, and I wanted to share them with you. Here we go. Alright, so just a disclaimer here, all these stories that I will be telling are completely true. However, the names of the patients and hospitals and companies and all that will not be included. So here we go. To start off, so typically how it works is you have to go, to get onto an ambulance as that role, you have to go to either EMT or paramedic school, which will... they have accelerated EMT schools that are as short as a month, which are very intensive, up to about 6 months to a year typically. Then you have to do a few different tests. You have to do a psychomotor exam. You have to do kind of a written exam for your state and your national. This is your NREMT license. From there, you are a certified EMT so long as you pass everything. And then you have to get hired. Once you get hired, that's kind of the next step. And then you have to go through an EMT, or rather an ambulance training, because every company does things just a little bit differently. We are brought to you by PremiumJane.com. Please use the promo code FERN, F-E-R-N, for 20% off at checkout. It's a great company. They make products for humans and for dogs, so check them out. More info in the description. So for this, you have to do, a number of kind of ride-alongs where you're sort of the third person on an ambulance, typically with two other paramedics. So these training rides, you're really hands-on, but you are also learning. So it's really kind of your first dive into the experience of basically what you're going to be doing on an ambulance. So my very first training ride is where my first story takes place. So literally the very first time I've ever been on an ambulance, at least as a fully licensed EMT. My very first call, so it's a code 3 call we get dispatched to. That means you're showing up lights and sirens. It's an emergency. It was we showed up to our city's jail, basically, and typically, if you've ever been to kind of the entrance of a major jail, you have a really big gate, kind of like you see on the outside of outside of Jurassic Park, right? Like where they keep the T-Rex, is this giant gate that slides open slowly. You drive through, the gate closes behind you, and then there's another gate you have to go through. So it's this big process. There's barbed wire everywhere. When we get to the scene, it's a person. This patient was arrested for, it's a male patient. I guess he jumped over the cashier's counter at a McDonald's or a fast food place and started stealing food and kind of was assaulting people behind the counter. So he was arrested, but while the police officers were taking him to jail to be processed and everything, he said that he had overdosed, taken just an absolutely ridiculous amount of cocaine and methamphetamines, fentanyl, stuff that, when you're taking them all together, or even in the doses that he's taking them individually, is effectively fatal. So we arrive to scene, and what we see is pretty shocking. So this guy is sitting in a wheelchair, kind of convulsing. His teeth are grinding. It's really intense. We think that he's sort of at his last moment. So we obviously get out our Narcan to start, which is it's sort of this nasal spray you inject into the patient's nose, and it effectively neutralizes most narcotics, most drugs, to kind of stabilize his vitals and bring him back. So we get that ready, and first thing I notice about him is he's literally covered in his own feces. So while he was in the back of the police vehicle on his way to jail, he had defecated into his hands and then wiped it all over himself and all over the back of the police vehicle to make it more difficult for the police. So that was the very first thing that I noticed once we got up close to him. And obviously that's not very sanitary. This is during the COVID time, so we already had our PPE on. We had goggles on, full gown, face mask, gloves, all that. We get up to him, and he's cuffed to the wheelchair he's sitting in, because he's just so, so unpredictable at this point. We end up trying to get him onto our gurney, which is kind of like the electronic stretcher that goes into the back of the ambulance for transport. When we get him uncuffed, he starts biting at everybody, and we have police officers there, a couple of firefighters are there that helped get him to the jail here. And once he got released, he started biting and swinging and doing all this crazy stuff. So we put what's called a face or a spit mask on him. It's basically this kind of ventilated bag you put over the patient's head. They can see out, but it's designed to kind of keep them from sort of biting and spitting and stuff. We put that on him. We had to use what's called a soft restraint. So it's basically it's one step down from handcuffs. You have these kind of Velcro, really thick Velcro straps that go around his wrists and ankles. We secured those to the gurney. And while we were getting him loaded up, he somehow managed to chew through his spit mask and he literally bit through his nylon, his soft restraints, which is absolutely, it's crazy if you've ever seen these. They're very similar to kind of the material a seatbelt is made out of. So I have no idea how he was able to do that. I'm sure he really destroyed his teeth doing it. But from there, we had to put on the next step up in restraints, which in this case was they're sort of like very thick, about an inch wide, and a lot of more dense zip ties. That got him there. That got him fully restrained. We were able to. We managed only just to get him into the back of the ambulance. Once he was in, we got him to the emergency room of a nearby hospital, and he immediately changed tunes. So he acted completely fine. He told us that he was just acting like he was overdosing so that he would get out of jail, all while telling us he was going to kill our children and that he has COVID and he's giving it to everybody and we're all going to die and all this crazy stuff, which wasn't true. He was COVID negative. He was just trying to get us to get away from him so he could leave. But we get him into the emergency room with security, and he starts screaming at the top of his lungs, just going da 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 over and over and over again next to other patients in the ER. Started spitting through that hole that he had chewed through his spit mask. Told us that we were holding him against his will, and the police didn't have a hold on him because it was such an emergency. We had to get him there quickly. And long story short, the physician just told us, we can't hold him without the police hold, so he had to just be let go. So we got him outside, got him kind of unshackled from the gurney. We think, okay, so this guy's just going to leave, and that's all he wanted. He was just trying to get out of jail, which he did. Didn't pay for his ambulance ride. Obviously, he was uninsured. He didn't have any identification or anything. While he was getting off, he grabs his backpack, which he had with him, pulls out Axe body spray, sprays down our gurney as we were trying to get everything loaded in, and tries to light it on fire. You know how you can kind of make an impromptu flamethrower with Lysol or deodorant or whatever and a lighter? That's what he did. Tried to light our gurney on fire. We managed to kind of smack the lighter out of his hands before he could continue. Totally crazy. So arson and all this crazy stuff. He finally leaves, tries to get back into the ER for some reason. Security comes and they tackle him to the ground, and he manages to evade the two security men who were there with him. Runs to the side of the building. I guess he somehow grabbed those soft restraints that we originally had on him, set those in a pile of leaves that was on the side of the hospital emergency room door, tried to light that on fire, and oh my gosh, we finally just managed to get him away from the property because there sort of wasn't a whole lot we could do. We notified the police where he was, but he got away with everything scot-free, and that was my very first 911 call ever. So I thought you guys would enjoy that. I hope you did. As always, thank you for listening and subscribing. I upload anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And again, please do check out premiumjane.com with that code word FERN, FERN at checkout for 20% off. It really does help out the podcast. And yeah, many more to come. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.